Hey guys, what's up everyone? Welcome back to a new video. This is the first part of the Astro.js tutorial series where we are going to build a couple of interesting projects using the Astro.js web framework. In this first part of the series, we are going to take it from the very beginning. We are going to create a static website, a very simple static website. We are going to upload that to GitHub and then we are going to deploy it to Netlify for free. In later parts of the series, we are going to build a markdown block, we are going to build a Linktree clone, a portfolio website, and we are going to build a dynamic web application that fetches some data from an API and uses server-side rendering that we are also going to deploy on Netlify. The Astro team has recently released the version 1.0 of the framework and I've been playing around with it for the past couple of weeks. I rebuilt my own portfolio website, I built a markdown block, and I built or rebuilt my Linktree clone with Astro. And I have to say the development experience so far is great. It's a great framework, especially for beginners because it's not that overwhelming like something like React. And I think it's a great starting point if you just start out in web development, but it's also a great framework for more seasoned developers who just want to really quickly and easily put together a site, be it a static site or a dynamic site or a blog. I think it's actually really great to build a blog. I will show you that a little bit later down this tutorial series. And I think it's just an overall great framework that doesn't overcomplicate things. It is really low friction and really, really easy to use. Now that being said, let's jump right in and write some code. Now, as you guys know, we always provide a written article that goes along with our videos. This is no different. I will leave the link in the video description below as well as in the upper right corner of your video. And you can just pull up that article in case I'm moving too fast, or if you just want to copy and paste some of the code snippets and you don't want to type all out. If you scroll down here, you can see all the code that we are going to use throughout this video is available here for you to copy and paste. And also the articles are really step by step, so you see every single step in here and it's easier for you to follow along if you have that article open. That being said, guys, let's jump right in. First, I want to quickly show you what I've built so far using Astro. And I built or rebuilt my portfolio website. So this is a really simple static website that I've built using Astro. It's really simple using Tailwind, and I have a bunch of my courses in there as well if you want to check them out. And it's just a really simple landing page here where I present some stuff that I'm doing basically, or I'm featuring some stuff that I'm doing. Then I also built my Linktree with Astro.js. So this is basically a Linktree clone, really, really simple to create. And we will do that later down in the series as well, where we're going to create our own Linktree. The advantage of this is you don't need to pay for Linktree. You can put all of the links in there you want. You can put as many links as you want. You can modify the layout. And I found it to be really useful and it's actually being used. I have it linked in my Twitter profile and people actually click on it and use the links provided in here. The last thing I've built, more of like a test project, was like a blog, markdown blog using Astro.js, and this is a really simple blog that I built and it's actually live because I'm doing some experiments on there. So you can see that all of this is acting like a proper blog, and it's really simple to use. You can use markdown files, and this also has a CMS that sits on Netlify. It's completely free to use. So I create those blog posts using my own CMS, and we are going to do this probably as the last part of this tutorial series, where we are going to build a fully fledged markdown blog. And I'm going to show you everything step by step from start to finish until you have it deployed and your CMS ready and set up. Alright, so to get started, there are a bunch of requirements that you need to fulfill to run Astro. All of them can be found in the written article and as well as in the Astro documentation. Now you do need Node.js version 16.12.0 or higher installed, and you can find a link on how to install Node in the video description as well as in the article. You can install that on macOS, you can install it on Windows, you can install it on Linux. And then I also recommend you guys to use VS Code as your code editor. if you don't use any other code editor yet, I recommend you guys to use VS Code with the official Astro extension. Link can be found in the article too. Now, as for the terminal, you can use whatever you want. You can follow this tutorial on Windows with PowerShell. You can follow it on Linux, or you can follow it on macOS. I'm on Windows using WSL2 here. If you want to know how to set up WSL2, I'll leave a link for you in the upper right corner of your screen right now, as well as in the video description. I also have a whole Udemy course that shows you exactly how I'm setting up my Windows with WSL2 with all the plugins for my web development workflow. And there's also a free tutorial series on the YouTube channel, as well as on the blog that gets you up and running, so that you have your terminal exactly looking like mine here. And this makes us a much nicer development experience. Other than that, you need a GitHub account and you need a Netlify account. That's basically all the basics you need to follow along with this tutorial. All right, let's get started. I'm following exactly the steps in the article to make sure that you can follow along with that too. Now, I'm in the directory here. I'm in my COSEC tutorials /Astro directory here on my WSL2, and I'm going to initiate a new Astro project by typing npm create astro at latest. And once I do that, it starts the Astro initialization thing wizard, and then it tells you, or it asks you a couple of questions, for example, where you want to create your new project. I'm gonna call that astro minus static minus site. I hit enter, and then we get some options on what we want to use. So there is 3 options, basically, a few best practices that basically sets you up with a little bit of a template and a little bit more files and pages to get an idea about the navigation. You can also use a personal website starter kit. You find all those templates, how they look like, as examples on the Astro website, so you can check that out. But for keeping things simple, we are going to create an empty project here, so to start with the minimum amount of files so that we can take it step by step from the very beginning. All right, and once we do that, it also asks us if we want to install all the npm dependencies that are required. Then we just hit enter to say yes. Installing a bunch of packages there. And I think the last question is if we want to use TypeScript in a relaxed or in a strict fashion. Obviously, if you're familiar with TypeScript, by all means go for strict. But we are going to choose relaxed for sure, since this is a beginner-friendly tutorial. One more question here. Would you like to initialize a new Git repository? We also say yes to that, or just hit enter. And now comes the TypeScript question. So for this, we choose relaxed. You can always change that later in the TypeScript config file. That is really easy to do. So you can change it later if you learn TypeScript on a later point. It is recommended to use TypeScript per default in Astro, but yeah, I don't know, for smaller projects, I don't think it's necessary to use TypeScript for your static portfolio website, to be honest. Unless you want to learn it, of course, it's always a good skill to have. Okay, now we have this project created, and we have to cd into it. So we do cd astro static site, and then we run a quick ls to make sure we are in the correct folder, and we are in fact in the correct folder. All right, the next thing we're going to do, we just look at the site, and for that I'm gonna hide my webcam here to give you guys more space to look at the actual important things here, which is not my face, but the output here. So we do npm run dev to start the dev server in Astro, and you can see it starts really quickly. And you can either like open this link up in your browser manually, or you can hold Control and click on it. That should also work on a Mac, and it opened up on my other screen, so I'm going to pull it over here. So this is the only thing we see when we run this Astro project. And if we actually inspect this page, actually let's make page source. I think that's a better way to do that. Close DevTools, there we go. And we do view page source. And as you can see, this is really only serving an HTML document with an H1. There is no JavaScript, nothing. There is nothing in there. It's a super small document, and it has nothing in there, so that basically makes it very fast. If you do the same thing in a React project, you will see a bunch of more code there, but more on that later. Okay, so this is how it looks like, our simple website. And I'm just gonna Control C out of the dev server here, and I'm gonna open up VS Code. Now you can either do that manually, or if you are using my WSL2 workflow, or if you're on Linux or macOS, you can just type code space dot to open up VS Code right out of this project folder, which makes it a lot easier. And I think this has still my old folders up there. Okay, so there we go. Now we have VS Code open, and we are going to look at the folder structure and at the pages and how a basic Astro.js project structure looks like. Now, to better demonstrate that for you, I'm just going through the folders. Astro is using an opinionated folder layout, so you should have at least the following folders and files in the root directory of your project. At least means there are some other guidelines on how that looks like. But the most basic folder structure is what we basically have here. So we have a source folder, and this is for project source code like components, pages, styles, and so on and so forth. We have our public folder here where basically nothing is in there yet, but the public folder is for unprocessed assets like fonts, icons, and so on and so forth, or later images for your markdown blog if you create one, or images for your website. That actually depends. I take that back because it depends on what kind of image processor you will be running later. If SEO is an issue, then there's two options to either store your files in the public folder or in the source folder under an assets folder. But more on that later. I don't want to overcomplicate it. So basically, this is all the public-facing assets that go in here. And as you can see, the favicon, which is this little thing here, is in there by default. The next thing is the package.json file, and if you have been dabbling in web development for a bit, then this file should be familiar with you, or other way around, you should be familiar with this file. This is basically all the npm packages you install, the Astro version that is being used, so you can see the dependencies here. This will fill up later once we will start using Tailwind CSS in a later part of this tutorial series and stuff like this. The next thing is the astro.config.mjs file, which is not here yet because we haven't, oh, it is actually here. Sorry, it's a default file. Of course it's here. So this is basically the Astro config file, and we need to set up some variables in there later. We're not going to touch it just yet. This gets relevant when you install additional packages that you can install using an Astro specific command. The beauty in Astro is that whatever Astro supported package you install, it automatically adds some stuff to this config file. So I rarely needed to do any manual things in here. So it always is an installation routine, so to say, that will automatically add the values inside of this config file that you need later. If we later create our markdown block with Astro and we use a CMS like Netlify CMS, then we have to use this config file more heavily because we are going to modify all of the fields that you see in your quotation mark backend in the Astro admin panel or in the CMS admin panel. You can modify all of those fields here and create new fields and so on and so forth. So this is really the Astro config file that you're going to use. Okay, the next thing is the tsconfig.json, and this is the TypeScript configuration file. You have a bunch of options here. You can look that up in the Astro documentation, but base is the relaxed version that we have, so we won't get any hard TypeScript errors and stuff like this. You can change this to strict, I think, and normal. I'm not sure what the values are, but this is the equal of the relaxed setting that we have set up earlier. To just demonstrate you guys how a more advanced file tree would look like, I'm gonna pull this quickly over here again from the written article. So this is a more complex file tree, in quotation marks complex, is not really complex at all. But you can see that inside of the source folder, there's a components folder where are some of our components like a button and a header. Then there is the layouts folder, which we will cover in a later tutorial, not in the first one. This basically lets you create layouts in Astro that apply to all of your sites or only to specific sites. Then we have the pages folder. This is the main route, basically, where all of your pages are created in. So everything you create in here, you can see index.astro is also in there. every new page you create in here, we will do that in a second, it gets automatically a route assigned to it, so you can open that up in your browser directly without using any kind of router or something like this. It can also have subfolders where you can or could put your posts if you run a markdown block or something along those lines. Then we also have the styles folder. This should be pretty obvious. There are global CSS files in there, or if you use any CSS, you put it in there. We will not really use any kind of CSS or bare CSS. We will maybe create a global CSS file to just set the box model and stuff like this, but this is all we're going to do in terms of CSS, because we will be heavily using Tailwind CSS, as I think it's a easier way to develop quickly. Then we have the public folder, where you can see there's an example in there. There's the robots.txt file that is relevant for search engines. Then there's the favicon SVG and the social image PNG file, which is just an image file. And then here are the Astro config, package JSON, and tsconfig JSON we were just talking about. So this is just an example of a little bit of a more again, quotation marks, complex structure in an Astro project, but just so that you get the idea of how that looks like in a larger project. Now that we have that out of the way, let's actually go and write a little bit of code. So for that, we're going to start the dev server again. So we do npm run dev. And I always like to have my terminal open next to me rather than having it open in the integrated VS Code terminal, so that I have more space for coding and I see the output a little bit more clearly, because I usually like to have more coding space. So I like to use the extra terminal on the side here, just as a side note. But by all means, use the integrated VS Code terminal to run your dev server if you want to. The next thing we are going to do here is we are going to open up the index.astro file. And this is basically the exact thing that you see in here. As you can see, the site has a title. It's called Astro, and it has an H1 called Astro. Now we are going to change that to my Astro front page. So we are going to remove basically the default text that was in there, and we update it to this. And as you can see, it directly live changes in here, so it reloads once you hit save. I have autosave enabled, so if you click on file, and this is the autosave feature. Now I also have the Astro extension installed, like I said, and this is I'm just going to show you that. Go to extensions here. Since this is a beginner tutorial, I want to make sure to show you everything. So this is the Astro extension that I was talking about. It's by the official Astro team. And I recommend you guys to use that. All right, so next we are going to we're going to create a new page. And since Astro uses file-based routing, every file that you create inside of your source pages folder, that's what I was talking about earlier, will become a new endpoint on your website. So let's create a new file inside of source pages, and we call that Astro about.astro. So we create a new file, we call it about.astro, and this creates a completely empty file. Now if you use VS Code, you can just do HTML. You can just type HTML and then choose HTML5. But we are not going to do that right now. We are just going to use the code from the tutorial, from the written article. So I'm going to create a body tag. Then I'm going to create an H1, and I just say, who am I? ? And then we just add a paragraph here, and we say, my name is Stefan, and I built my first Astro project using, let's put an A tag here, using HTTPS www.cusec.com, and then we type that in here, and you're gonna see that a little bit better in a second when I hit save. Okay, there we go. So we have this new file created here. Let's give us a little bit more space. And this is basically all there is to it. Now you can see there is no HTML here, and this is because later on we are going to use a layout that wraps around of our code basically, and every page that we use will have meta tags and stuff like this automatically injected using this layout file. But since we keep it the most simple we can here in this first part of the tutorial series, we are just going to do it like this because that also works. So if you now navigate to localhost 3000 and then /about, you can see that it automatically created this route for us. We didn't need to set up any router. We didn't need to do any further configuration. Every file that you create in here automatically gets a route. So now that we have that all set up, we basically cannot navigate around other than manually navigating here to the about page and back. So we are going to add a very quick and stupid navigation bar into our file. It's not really a bar, it's just links, but it demonstrates you how easy linking is as well. So you don't need to import anything. You can just go ahead and create link tags. So we do an href and we say / for home, so this is the root directory, which always leads to index.astro, and then we do another href and we do / about, and we say about here. And if you hit save, I'm going to copy and paste that, and you should do the same. So we're going to copy and paste those two things, those two hrefs, and now if you click on about, we can see that we go on the about page. But now we are on the about page, and of course we cannot go back, so we switch over there. And we are going to paste in these navigation links here as well. And now we can navigate between the about page and between the index.astro file. All right, guys, challenge time. Let's do a real quick challenge here to make sure you understood what we did so far. So I want you to do those steps. So first, create a new page called hobbies.astro inside of the pages folder. Add body text to it, as you can see here, the same thing. Add an h1 with my hobbies, so this is the equivalent to our h1 here. Then you add an UL below the h1, and then add your hobbies inside of li elements inside of the UL tags. And finally, add navigation links and update the links in index.astro and about.astro to include your new hobbies.astro page. Pause the video here, see if you can do that by your own, and just give it a try, and we will finish that up once you are continuing with the video. All right, how did that go? Did you manage to do it? If not, let's do it together now. So the first thing we're going to do, we create a new file in here called hobbies.astro. Then we open that up. Now we want to add some body tags again. And inside of those body tags, we want to create an h1 where we say my hobbies. Underneath of this h1, we want to create an unordered list. We're going to open that up, and then we want to add our hobbies with li elements. And wow, actually that's pretty good, a pretty good guess of my hobbies, because I like playing video games, I like watching movies, I kind of like playing sports sometimes, I like reading, and I also like listening to music. So GitHub Copilot knows me better than myself probably. So I'm gonna just use these, and you can put in your hobbies in there, of course. And yeah, I think that's it. Now we have this page available, and then also we need to add some links. So we go ahead and copy these from our about.astro file to save us some time, and I'm gonna paste them in here. And then I'm gonna add, of course, a new href in here which says hobbies. That's the name of our hobbies.astro file. And then we also need to write hobbies in here to add it to our header or to our navigation, simple navigation bar. And then we copy that. We also paste that inside of about.astro, and we also paste that inside of the index.astro. And now we can navigate, and we have our hobbies here. And I'm sure you got that done by your own. Alright guys, so you got the basics, the bare basics of Astro. This is as simple as it gets when it comes to creating a website. Now, to not make this first part of the tutorial series too long, we are going to deploy our project to Netlify and then continue to build our static website in the next part of this tutorial series, where we will talk about more complicated, no, not really complicated, more advanced things like layouts, slots, and all this kind of good stuff. Okay, so the beauty on this deployment method is that Netlify uses continuous deployment, which means once you have deployed your project to Netlify, Netlify will automatically update your website after you run git push without the need to do anything else. So you can just edit your project, you can upload to GitHub or update on GitHub, and then your site gets built on Netlify and updated. Now there are two options to go about this. The first and easiest option, probably the easiest option for most, is to upload your project to GitHub and then deploy it on Netlify using the Netlify website. The second option is deploying your project using the Netlify CLI, and for that GitHub needs to be set up in your terminal. There really isn't an advantage or disadvantage of using the one over the other method, but we are going to show you both methods so you can choose which one you like better. If you already know, obviously, how to deploy your project on GitHub, you can just do that right now and skip this part and just continue with the deployment. We will use option 1, GitHub and Netlify first. For ease of use, I'm going to use GitHub Desktop. I really like GitHub Desktop. I use it both on macOS and on Windows, and it also works really well with WSL2. Now this is how GitHub Desktop looks like. You can just download and install it if you want to, and we just need to add our project to GitHub Desktop, and then we can publish it. Now if you use WSL2, there is a cool trick. You can just use WSL path -w and then a dot, which shows you the current path that you're in translated to a Windows path. So you can just go ahead and copy that. And of course, if your repository is somewhere else, if it's on Windows or something like this, you just have to navigate to that folder. And to do that in GitHub Desktop, we click on File, we click on Add Local Repository, then we paste in the path to our repository, we click on Add Repository, then it shows up in here, and then we just do a initial commit. We click on Commit to Master, or main, whatever it is in your case. I don't actually know why it's still master. I think they wanted to change it to main or something, but sometimes it's still master. And then we click on publish repository. And then you can choose if you want to keep that code private or not. I'm going to make that public so you guys can pull that down. So I'm going to click on publish repository here. And should be published in a second. There we go. It's published and it's up on GitHub. Okay, I probably have to blur a bunch of stuff out here. I'm not sure. Maybe I don't have to. I'm not sure. I didn't do this on a video yet. But this is how your Netlify account looks like after you signed up. Again, it's completely free to use. So once you signed up there, then you just click on Sites. Then you see all your sites that you have here. And then you click on Add New Site. And then you click on Import an existing project. And then you have a bunch of options in case you use some other options here. But we are using GitHub, so we click on GitHub. Now my GitHub is opening up, and I already authorized Netlify to use my GitHub, to have access to my GitHub. And then I have all my repositories here that some of them I probably cannot show you, but those are all the repositories that I have already authorized Netlify to use and have published on Netlify. Now there's a button here, probably bigger if you don't have any added to Netlify yet, that says configure the Netlify app on GitHub. That's what we want to do next. So then we click on configure. Once that opens up, maybe you need to log in. I'm just going to quickly do that. All right, let's log in. So this is my GitHub account. And then if you scroll down a bit, quite a lot, let's make that bigger. If you scroll down, we can then choose two options. So we can give Netlify access to all repositories or only selected repositories. I like the extra layer of security, and I will do only select repositories here. And then I click select repositories, and then I'm searching for Astro static site, and it shows up here right on top. And I click on it. And I click on save. I guess that it's already here. Okay. Then we get redirected to Netlify, and then we see it showing up here, and we can see that it's not private, but it's actually public. So every private repository you can see here with a locker as private. And then we select it from here, from this menu. And then this is all correct per default. In case it's something different in there, make sure to adjust it. So you need to deploy the branch, obviously, that is your master or main branch. You want the base directory to be like this. You want to run the npm run build command, and the published directory is the dist directory. So this is completely correct, automatically filled in by Netlify since they recognize this is an Astro site. Then you click on deploy site, and then we get redirected back to Netlify. And now the deployment process, or the deployment is in process. You can see it's building here. It takes somewhere around a minute. It's really, really fast. Let's just quickly wait for that to finish. And that's it. It took about 30 seconds, and then you get a link here. And I'm also going to show you later how to hook that up to a custom domain or to your own domain, that you actually have a fully fledged domain in there. So you can host a website for a year, and the only thing you have to pay is the domain. So it's like $13 or $14 per domain, depends on what. There are cheaper domains, but you only have to pay this. You don't have to pay any hosting cost or anything like that. So you click on it, and voila. I cannot believe I just said voila. But there's our website, and it's online, and everybody can watch that. And if you actually go in here, and we now do view page source, you can see there is nothing there. It's just HTML that is served. There is zero JavaScript there. That makes the page load extremely fast. And this, if you are a blogger, if SEO is relevant to you, hitting those Google Web Vitals scores is critical. So if you get a page that has 100% Google page speed right off the get-go, that is a really big advantage. So if you go to Google page speed test, there we go. I'm not sure if it first needs to crawl that or if it works right now, but let's just try that. It probably throws a bunch of SEO errors and stuff since we haven't really configured anything there, but the performance metrics should be there in a second. And there we go. It goes 100 right off the get-go because there is nothing to be loaded. It's extremely fast, extremely slim, and as you can see, the only complaints we get is SEO because we don't really have any SEO metadata set up there, and as well as the alt images, description and stuff like this. So this is the only complaints here, but best practices, performance is 100%. So this is really, really awesome. Alright, so now that you know how to deploy a site to Netlify using GitHub Desktop or GitHub in general, I'm going to show you how to use the Netlify CLI. I actually prefer the Netlify CLI now because it allows me to just work faster right out of the terminal, update my sites and get a link to open them, etc. I don't need to actually open Netlify at all. I can just work right out of the terminal, and that's what I really like. So the first thing you need to do is you need to install Netlify CLI. So you do npm install Netlify -CLI -G to install it globally, and this will just take a couple of seconds to finish. Alright, Netlify has been installed. Then you need to do Netlify login. I'm already logged in. If you're not logged in, it will prompt you to open up a browser window, accept the token and authorize your terminal. Once we have done that, we do Netlify init to initialize this folder as a Netlify site. And then we can choose if we want to connect this directory to an existing Netlify site. That would be the case if you already published a site using GitHub, so the method we were covering before, and you want to hook that up to Netlify CLI. Or in our case, for this example, we are going to create and configure a new site. And then we have to select the theme. This is the default. You can choose a site name if you want to. This just changes the subdomain URL. I don't do that now. I hit enter. Then we can already see an URL and a admin URL. Then it tells us to specify a build command. Astro build is fine. We choose the directory to deploy. Dist is also fine. So we hit enter again. And then it adds some keys, creates some GitHub hooks. And then we can see that there are a bunch of commands that we have. Now to deploy it, we need to do Netlify deploy. And once we run Netlify deploy, it should give us an error because we didn't run Netlify build first. So we first need to run Netlify build. And this creates a local build. So it basically builds the whole project. There we go. And then we do Netlify deploy. And this should now deploy our site to Netlify. And you can see it's deploying, it's building, waiting for deploy to go live, and boom, there it is. Actually, it was much faster than using the GitHub method. So yeah, that's how it is. And then we can do, I think it's Netlify open. I guess it's Netlify open if you're in the current directory. And then we have the URL of our site here. This is the admin URL. Let's see. Where is the actual? This is the draft. Let's open the admin URL, which opens the Netlify app. And then we can click on the actual link. I forgot the command that allows us to see the URL. Maybe it's Netlify URL, Netlify sites, Netlify open, where is it? Yeah, whatever. Netlify link. No, that's not that. Okay, never mind. You can open it that way as well, so we can see that our site is live within just a couple of seconds using Netlify CLI. Alright guys, I think we have covered enough ground on this first part of the Astro.js tutorial series. I took it really slow. I hope everybody was able to follow along, but I wanted to make sure that you guys are able to actually build up a Astro.js project from the ground so you understand the bare basics of it. I didn't want to use any pre-configured templates or anything really. I just wanted to really go from the very beginning. Now I hope it wasn't too slow. I also hope it wasn't too fast, because I cannot potentially make it any slower, but I wanted everyone to be able to follow along. Every beginner that wants to look into Astro, I want you to understand the basics on how to use Astro, and we will build up on more complicated topics in the next parts of the tutorial series. Let me know guys how you like that, if this is something you're interested in. Maybe you want some specific topics covered when it comes to Astro. Let me also know in the comments below, and absolutely make sure to subscribe to this channel and leave a comment in the video below, because this shows me that you guys are interested in those kind of in-depth tutorial series, and I will keep producing them for you guys, and I hope to see you back in the next one. Also make sure to check out the links in the video description below if you're interested in pimping your terminal a little bit and getting it to look like mine. This WSL2 tutorial series is just made for you. Alright guys, thanks for watching, and I hope to see you back in the next part.